Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give folks another maybe 30 seconds to hop on. If you are here, you'll see that you are welcome to share your video if you'd like. You don't have to, but note that you are muted. And we welcome any questions that you have today via the chat. So if you submit those throughout the presentation, we will collect them and ask them to our presenter at the end. Okay, it is just past noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much again for joining us today. My name is Jenny Gibson, and I am the Director of Family Engagement and Philanthropy here at Alfred. And I'm so excited to welcome you here. We are going to have two other webinars this semester, one in March and one in April, and I will send you those dates. You'll get a thank you email for attending today, and I will include those dates for you there, and you'll get a couple of other emails with information on how to register. So we hope to see you back for that. As I said before, and I'll keep reminding folks in the chat, please, if you have questions, thank you. I see that we already have one submitted. Please go ahead and submit those in the chat throughout. And it is my pleasure to introduce and announce, I guess, introduce you to Max Koskoff, and he's our Director of Residential Communities.
Thank you, Jenny, for having me as your first presenter. So good afternoon, everyone, or if it's morning, good morning, everyone. My name is Max Koskoff. I use he, him, his pronouns. I've been at Alfred for the past almost 2 years, and I am the Director of Residential Communities. Still get that name messed up, I apologize. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through the housing selection process for next fall. So this is assuming that your student is a returning student to Alfred and you are wanting to get ahead, which is great. There we go. So our afternoon agenda is our housing policy, our housing waiver request process, our accommodations process, our really the meal plan selection process, and processes that we're trying to build to help support both you and your student. A thing to note that I cannot stress enough is that even though the dates are firm, some of the information is still in flux. So buildings that you see may be right, they may be switched, but the general process will stay the same. And that is due to hopefully student experience projects that we have coming down the road over the course of the summer. So a housing selection process is the process in which we give students the opportunity to select their rooms, also roommates for the upcoming year. The goal is to provide everyone the most fair process possible. So it's not just, oh, they're favorites, I'm going to give them, or your student is a star athlete, they're going to get it, or they're a 4.0 student, they're going to get what they want. The idea is to make it fair amongst all of our residential students. And also it's really important to know that because of interest grows, interest changes, students aren't guaranteed their first preference of their room or hall. As much as we try and make that happen, it is not a guarantee. So we're going to start with our waiver requirements. So the waiver requirements, or to be waived from residence life. Alfred University is a fully residential campus. We fully believe that living on campus is a component of a well-rounded, holistic experience for college students. So students are required to live on campus for a minimum of 3 years or 6 semesters in order to be considered for the waiver policy. And then you also must have a 3.0 cumulative GPA with no active conduct, disciplinary records, and you also would have to submit or participate, I should say, in a seminar in order to be waived. The QR code on the screen is one of the one that will bring you to our waiver process in the Alfred website. If you also just search Alfred housing waiver, it should pop up. But these are the reasons that students may be eligible for a waiver of living on campus if they are not a if they're not a 6th semester student. So if they're married in a legal partnership, if they're providing direct care for a legal dependent, 23 years or older, already possessing a baccalaureate degree from a accredited institution, and any of those, plus the completing an academic approved co-op internship or study abroad experience, any of those need to be emailed to the student experience at alfred.edu email address showing proof of that. Now, if they are residing with a parent or court appointed legal guardian, or it's the person's permanent address, and they are commuting from either 60 miles if you are grandfathered in from this fall or older, this spring it changed to 30 miles. And what we do is we look at that address and we go towards Google and we say, how far is it? If it falls under, then you're good. And you would have to then submit a notarized signature of that. And that is the waiver process. I have to click each one of these. There we go. So as I said, all students are expected to live on campus for a minimum of 3 years. The biggest piece of advice I can tell you to tell your students is do not sign a lease without being approved. Because we don't want you to have to pay for 2 contracts, essentially. We will be doing the approval process after grades come out. So that is a May, late May, early June approval process for the approvals. Went too far that time. Students should fill out a housing application and a waiver application simultaneously, and both will be in their Alfred University Housing Self-Service Portal, which we'll get into in a few moments. Also, if they successfully do live off campus and then are found responsible for violating the Code of Student Conduct, they can be required to move back onto campus, and that waiver can be revoked. So we move into the accommodations process. Most people think I have a say in the accommodations process. I actually don't. The accommodations process is not run through my office. It is run through the Center for Academic Success. So what you would do is you would go onto the Center for Academic Success's website and then go through, scroll down, and you'll see a thing that says accommodations. You want the housing accommodation one. You would click on that, you would fill out that application. You need a doctor, psychiatrist, for whatever reason the accommodation is needed, you need to have them as well, your provider, fill out a form. It is for students with approved documentations, and that is then goes to a committee, which then they decide if that accommodation is met or not, based upon the provider's information and the student's self-disclosure. And that is really important to say, because also just because the provider says my student needs to be living off campus may not be the answer that the committee gives. The housing accommodation process, again, to stress, to try and keep within our timeline. If your student is looking for housing accommodations and doesn't have any currently, I suggest you start that process as soon as you can. And we can talk individually, and you can email me individually about those questions if you need. But the idea is anyone who's approved by March 4th, either for future or current, will have an individual meeting with me to basically pick their assignment, so we can pre-place them. Again, it's about a fair process for all students. So our housing selection timeline. We're going to start with the housing accommodation process, which was just said. Housing applications are due Tuesday, March 14th. Because the following week is when we actually do the housing selection. So to prepare students, especially our first year students, because a first year student may not want or may not know what a Pine Hill Suite looks like, is we're going to do roommate socials and tours where we're going to bring students, doesn't matter if they're a first year student or a sophomore looking to become a junior living in the apartments, we're going to bring them to all of the different buildings that are for upper class students. So that is a fun thing that will happen over the next couple of weeks. We're just starting to plan those. But most likely it will be not all at once, but like, oh, Pine Hill Suite is this day versus Connors, which would be that day. So that is that part of the process. So our apartments, which are for juniors and seniors, are 4 and 6 person apartments, which is why it says that. Our suites are all 6 person. They're open to sophomores and above. And basically that apartment would select on Tuesday, March 21st. If your student is interested in a single or double, that would, let's say in Connors or in Cruzen or the Brick, that process for them would be Wednesday, March 22nd. And then review day is Thursday, March 23rd, which is basically if anyone missed the process or doesn't like their outcome, we try and work with them one-on-one to massage it to make their experiences better and set them up for success in a better way. So we do have a cohort housing model or cohort style of housing here. So rising sophomores will be able to choose from Cruzen, the Brick, Connors. Rising sophomores through seniors will be able to choose Pine Hill Suites. And if they want to live in mixed gender suites, they're absolutely allowed to do that. Rising juniors and seniors will exclusively be able to select into Ann's, Joel's, or Ford Street apartments. Our suites are 6 person apartments. It's 2 doubles, 2 doubles, share a living room, share a small kitchenette. And most of the time we see our athletic teams kind of taking a suite and going in as a cohort. So that is the nice thing about them. So these, I'm not sure if they're posted anywhere else on the Alfred website, but these are the rates that will be coming for next year. A double room rate, depending upon how you look at it, is $33.45 per semester, or the $7,090 per year. A single room rate is $3,905 per semester, or $7,810 per year. The meal plans, because meal plans are, I don't want to say in flux, but because students can change them halfway through the year if they so choose. That's why we do that by the semester rate. For a commuter meal plan, if you are a commuter or a Ford Street student or a senior, you are eligible for a commuter meal plan if you so choose. If you are a senior, if you do not want a meal plan, you actually don't need one. And then bills will become available July 15th. So even though they're approximately July 15th, so even though they are choosing their meal plan and housing in March, it won't actually appear on their bill until mid-July. So now we go into eligibility, and this is where we'll get a little bit nitty gritty, but we don't really so much worry about the nitty gritty, think about the process. If a student logs in, you're most likely going to see that instead of FA22, it will say FA23. And they first need to complete their housing license. Housing licenses will be able to be completed starting probably next week, if not the week after, but very soon. And then they're going to fill out the fall 23 returning student application, which is under their applications tab. Once they complete it, they sign it, they will receive a PDF copy that it basically says, here, you've signed up and you've signed. If they're under 18, you will need to sign for it as well. If they're over 18, the student is good. All of the applications need to be filled in or submitted by Tuesday, March 14th. And that is really important because only those who submit applications can actually be searched for in roommate worlds in the system. Sorry, I was passed a note. The housing license, because I didn't actually say what that is our contract with our student. So it is basically the student agrees to pay, the student agrees to be enrolled as a full-time student. The student agrees to recognizing that there's health and safety pieces. So that is the housing license. The groups locked in, as I'm going to go back to the groups locked in. Groups locked in starting March 16th. That is so we can then distribute priority numbers. So let's say Jenny and I want to be in a group together. She has to submit an application. I have to submit an application, and then someone has to go in and actually mutually accept them.
Max, as we go on, a question just came up that I think is good for right now.
Okay.
Please remind us where the license and application are found.
Great question. So the application and license will be in the Alfred University Housing Self-Service Portal, and it is available to students via their student email and their process. And all students, by the way, once we actually open the process, we'll be getting an email that says your housing selection has started for the fall 23 year. Please go in and start the process, and we'll give them written out instructions.
The Alfred email.
The Alfred email. So they need to be checking their Alfred email.
Thank you.
Welcome. It's a great conversation starter to have, especially over spring break. Because by spring break, all of this they should have an idea of when they're doing what. So to select roommates, as I was saying, Jenny and I decide we want to live together in a Pine Hill suite with 4 of our friends. We both have to submit our application as well as the other 4 people. And then we all have to mutually agree to it and then search for roommates that way. You send the roommate request, and then someone has to ensure everyone else is matched. At that point, you're all set. Once everyone is confirmed match, we're good. The students are good. They now have to do the room selection, which is that Tuesday or Wednesday. So students will receive a priority number for selection. It is generated by class year with seniors going first, followed by juniors, sophomores, first years. So there are some seniors who may be in the process because they're staying an extra year. That is fine. It is the average of all of those people put together. Each student will receive an assigned selection time. So mine may be 9:02 a.m., whereas Jenny's may be 9:04 a.m. And basically, if I am going into this process, I can then select all of our times, or I can select all of our beds, and I can place all of our beds together. And I can then confirm. Then if I miss my time, guess what? I can still go into the process at any time. However, it doesn't stop Jenny from going in at 9:04 or somebody else coming in at 9:04. Any student in a group may choose rooms based on their assigned time, like I said, and you'll be able to pull in those of your assigned group. Once selected, students and their roommates cannot change rooms. So you can't, once you say confirm, I want to live in Connor's 202, you can't go back in later, 15 minutes later, and like, I want to move to 215. It doesn't work that way. So once you confirm, you're good. Once your time passes, like I said, the next group student will be able to select in, but you can as well. Your time slot will be open until 4 p.m. that day. and we make sure that we space it out so that way everyone has a fair enough time and everyone knows their time slot in advance. Students must fill the bedroom completely, so that's a big part of this. Students can't necessarily have a double as a single unless, again, it is a medical accommodation. So your student may want to start trying to find a roommate, and someone who they feel like they can live with and be successful. If there are issues and your student is having issues day of room selection, please don't email, call us. It's not worth it. Just send them directly to our office in Bartlett. As we will be staffed appropriately and be present that day to help and support if your student has any issues.
And just to clarify, is this room selection process online or in person?
Great question. The roommate selection or the room selection process is all online. We have a very trusted system, and it's one that is nationally renowned and a lot of schools use it. And basically the idea is that it won't crash and everything is updated in real time. So if you're in 201 in Connors, but Jenny clicks that submit button first, 201 is no longer available. You want 202. So I would encourage your students to have 2 or 3 rooms that they are really excited about and really see them being successful in.
Great.
And here's kind of where it goes. So on March 21st, they're going to log into their housing service, AU housing self-service at their designated time. They select their room, and then you'll see every single bed that's available on campus that you can select into. So if you're a sophomore, you're not going to be able to necessarily, if you're a current first-year student, you're not going to necessarily be able to see 4th Street apartments. But you'll be able to see everything else, and then you would want to select into one of those spaces that you see. You're going to place your friends in any of the beds that are available, and then ensure the group is fully matched, which is done previously, and then click go. So one of the important things that a lot of people forget about during the housing selection process is you can also select your dining plan during that same process. So students should ensure that they select their appropriate meal plan, whichever one they choose that works best for them and where they're living. Also note that the dining plan you actually can change daily if you so choose, up and through the first week of classes of the semester. So if you want to change it 5 times in a day, you can. Recognize your bill might be a little bit weird, but you can do it. So, some conclusion points. Once completed, all students hopefully will have their housing selection done. And a double catch to that is we're doing housing selection before class selection this year. So advisors, when they're going in for their class selection, will know whether or not they've selected housing. So there will be that backup. So even if they completely miss this process, it doesn't mean that they're out of luck or that they can't live on campus. We'll find a way to house them, because that is very important. Again, our core belief. Request to change rooms will not be available until midsummer, most likely early to mid-July, because at that point bills have gone out and we can then kind of play with things if we need to. So once you select, you're going to be in a holding pattern until that mid-July time, and then from there we can work on room changing you if you so choose. Questions, if you have any, please direct them to residencelife@alfred.edu or myself, which actually isn't there, but we'll put it in the chat. So I think this is where we're going to go into questions in one moment. So we do have some good resources for all of you that we're trying to build in. One is microfridge, which we started a partnership this past year. So if you don't feel like bringing a fridge and lugging a fridge and storing a fridge, you can actually get one rented through them. That is completely fire safety. approved by our New York State Fire Marshal. And it's a really good deal. It also saves you from lugging it up flights of stairs, or lugging it down flights of stairs. Another one is Dormify, which we used previously. They were previously known as OCM, which stands for On-Campus Marketing. They've now been called Dormify. So they're a linen organization and care package organization, but they have a bunch of other items that students may need in their collegiate experience. The last two, or the other two, I should say, are ones that we're looking to add over the next few months. BradGuard is a nationally student insurance program for renters insurance. So if your homeowner policy doesn't have or cover, I should say, items that happen to your students at college, we're giving them an option to add in insurance into their housing application through a third-party software or third-party vendor, I should say, called BradGuard, which a lot of institutions use, and they see the benefit of it because if something happens of significance here on campus, it most likely will not be covered by the institution. So that's why you need insurance to cover your property. And the last one is dorm room movers, which is one which we are hopefully going to have in by this summer. So if you need a storage place and you don't want to lug stuff back from California or wherever, or need something shipped, they will take care of it. It's a great program, and you basically, they'll give the student labels and the student can track their packages throughout the country. If they're getting shipped home, or even if you want to ship stuff ahead of time to them, they'll hold it and then they'll have it all in your room before you get here. So it's a little great process. So I have now finished. I'm sorry I talked way too fast, I feel like. So questions, what did I miss?
Okay, so a very timely one. We got a question that says, we have been told that some dorm rooms have mini fridges supplied. Is that true? And if so, which dorms?
Great question. The suites have a mini fridge for the entire suite. So it is a part of the kitchenette. The kitchenette includes a fridge, a 2-burner stove, a microwave inside the kitchenette, and a sink. So if they're going to live in the suite, then they have a mini fridge, but it is a mini fridge split amongst 6 people. So space is probably very limited.
And which dorms?
All of the Pine Hill suites
Okay.
have, each suite has its own mini fridge. Anything outside of that, each residence hall has a kitchen, but again, it's a communal kitchen. The apartments do have their own full-scale kitchen, so they would have also their own fridge, but again, juniors and seniors.
So back at the beginning, we had a question about storage options for students on campus.
Yeah, on campus, no, we don't have storage options on campus.
Do we have recommended suppliers?
Recommended suppliers, right now, the best one I can give you is Ames Storage, AIMS storage. Or they also go by Alfred Student Storage. The idea though is that dorm room movers will subcontract Alfred Storage to do what they need. So once we get the dorm room movers one finalized, I would recommend that. If that's not finalized by the time you need it, Alfred Student Storage. But we do not support one or another, and we don't mandate it. We just say there is no storage on this campus.
Great. So we had a couple questions about accommodations.
Yeah.
So one, if you had a housing accommodation as a freshman from a doctor, do you need to submit a new doctor's directive for next year?
Unless the specific accommodation letter says that you need to re-up or inform us of your accommodation, or re-inform us of your accommodation, then no. Usually accommodations are for the duration of a student's experience here at Alfred University. If you are concerned, I recommend having your student reach out to me, so that way I can make sure that it is in our system though. As when we bought our new system, some of the data got missed and we've been filling it in. So if you want to double check it, I recommend that their student contact me.
And then the other one is, do you have to request an accommodation in order to request a single room?
In order to request a single room, no, you do not need an accommodation. However, singles are limited and therefore it may be the best way to go about it if you think that is what you need to be successful on this campus as a student. However, I do remind you, some people, without knowing the specific situation, some people need peace and quiet to study. Residence halls aren't traditionally a place of studying, they're a place to support studying. A place to study, though, could be the library. We do have a 24-hour quiet room actually in our Herrick library. So that's a great place if your student needs to actually go full peace and quiet studying. That's something I recommend.
Lovely. We got a question. Are there any suites that have air conditioning?
So, no, the only two buildings that have air conditioning are Connors Hall. Connors Hall also has an elevator in it, and Joel's house, which is for juniors and seniors. So Joel's house has air conditioning. Connors has air conditioning, but Connors is for second year students. And you can't bring your own air conditioner unless it is an approved accommodation. So you can, if you need an air conditioner for whatever reason, you can put that as a request for an accommodation as well.
Thank you. We got a question about RAs. When do RAs get confirmed for fall semester?
Yeah, so that actually gives me a little bit of a plug moment. So if your student wants free, necessarily almost free housing, because they basically get a stipend to pay off their housing, have them consider being an RA. Applications are due at this Friday, but we'd love to see their interest, and they can be found on the actual HR website of Alfred University. So applications though for RA are due this Friday. RAs hear about their living placement, I will say, I'll use that word, their placement before spring break, and then they have the entire week of spring break to think about it before giving us an answer.
You said this Friday?
It's the application is due.
Okay, so if your student is interested in being an RA, they need to get on it this week.
Yeah.
It's timely.
It's timely.
Yeah, check your email. They got emails back.
Several, but it's a great leadership experience. And honestly, if we're going outside of housing for a second, if you find an employer who's a former RA, it's an immediate connection that is people don't talk about enough. Because then it's like, oh, you're an RA, I was an RA, let's share stories, and then you have an automatic employment connection with a future employer.
What are those qualifications generally for an RA? We got that question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The qualifications to be an RA generally is having satisfactory academic progress, and to basically be a student on this campus that isn't a first-year student. So if you've lived on campus for one semester and you're satisfactory academic progress, your application will be seen. If you have significant conduct issues, there will be a conversation, but beyond that, those are the main requirements. We look for leadership experience. If you were active in your high school, whether it was student government, programming committee, if you're even a Boy Scout or Girl Scout, there are all these transferable skills into being an RA, which are also transferable skills for life that will help you in that process.
What about, is there any additional discount on meal plans for RAs?
Not at this moment. It is something we're looking to change. And the thing is, students will, when RAs sign their contract, they will know what their compensation is.
So we got two questions that are very similar. So one is, can a student keep their same room for next fall and so forth? And the other one is, should second year students expect to have the same type of dorm as the one they were placed in during their first year?
So the first question, and if I get these wrong,
can they keep their same room?
Yeah, can they keep their same room? No. you can request to be in your same room again. However, if they were placed in Moskowitz is always going to be for first year students moving forward. But the same type of space, I'd recommend them, if they're in Moskowitz, go look at Connors or Brick for a very similar experience. But they cannot keep their room year over year.
And the other one was, should students, second year students expect a similar dorm placement to what they had their first year?
I don't fully understand that, so I would ask that parent contact me individually. So they can easily expect a similar experience. However, the specific building is probably not, unless by chance they select back into it because it's a suite or something, because again, those are open for everyone.
Yeah, I think if you have more specific questions, I would say reach out directly to Max.
And I
put it in there.
Oh, you put it in there? Thank you.
So we also had somebody ask about the different residential communities, any that you wanted to highlight?
So I don't know if you're looking at living learning communities or the buildings overall. Living learning communities we'll know more about within the next couple of weeks about which ones we're going to offer or not. Because they change from first year to second year, and we're doing that assessment right now. The actual buildings themselves, a few things to note. Pine Hill Suites, again, 3 bedrooms, each being a double, living room, kitchen. It's a wonderful space if you have 6 friends who are like, we're 6 best friends, or we're part of the exact same activity and we live the same lifestyle. Great. For those people who are not like that and who maybe want a sense of quiet, I recommend Connors, because Connors is just it's a refresh building, so it's a renovation by Greg Connors, who was a emeritus board of trustee and chair. So he renovated a building to make it successful for students. So there's a lovely kitchen, there's a lounge on every floor, there's washing machines on every floor, or washers and dryers, I should say. There's study rooms on the first floor. There's a lot of shared communal space. But that building also has air conditioning and an elevator, so it's wonderful. It's very modern. And then the Brick is where most of our second and third year art students go, just by chance, because they love it. There are some classes for the art studios down in the basement of the building, so it's an easy commute class. And that was also recently renovated last year at the generosity of trustee Ann Moskowitz.
So speaking of Connors, we had a question: if your student has a group of friends who know they want to live in Connors, can they somehow request an entire floor?
So an entire floor would be 53 beds. So I don't think you have 53 friends. And then if you minus the 2 RAs, it gets to about 49 beds available. However, if your group of friends want to go double all along the line, there's nothing saying that they can't. They just have to be really well timed in their work to do it.
Lovely, thank you. What kind of rooms are the RAs assigned?
RAs currently are assigned a double by themselves. So they get a full big double to themselves.
That sounds like another perk, another reason.
It absolutely is a great perk. They also get discounted parking.
Ooh.
If you're an RA.
So can you speak to any improvements that we are planning to implement in any of the buildings over the summer for next year?
Currently, that's actually a 3 p.m. meeting today. So at this moment, I do not know. But we are looking to make every single building better over the course of the summer through a significant upgrades of whether that be aesthetics or actual interiors, or what's the other word I'm looking for? Aesthetics. I'm trying to remember it and I forget. Infrastructure. Thank you.
Yes.
So we're looking for a lot of improvements, and there's a meeting about it today, but what actually specifically happens, I don't know yet.
So stay tuned.
Absolutely. And again, it's all at the idea of bettering the student experience here at Alfred University.
That is what we all are striving for every single day. I think we have hit all of our questions, and if you have one, please submit it right now. I will pass it back to Max before we close right now.
So I got the other two notes that I missed from earlier, which are one, for the residency waiver. In years past, financial reasoning has been a reason to be waived out of the residency requirement. That is no longer a, I don't want to say an effective reason, but it is no longer a reason for the waiver. So what I recommend students doing, if financial is hurting them at this time, as it is hurting a lot of students across the country, please connect with your financial aid counselor early. And if you need to know who your financial aid counselor is, just simply go to financial aid and ask. It's not the worst thing to walk into a building and ask for help. We are all here to help you, and to help your students. So financial, not an approved reason for a waiver. The second thing is, please work with your students, remind your students, ask them about any holds that they may have on their accounts. So you'll be able to sign up for a room even if you have a hold. However, once August hits, and if that hold hasn't actually cleared, they won't actually be able to move in. And really, that's what we want. We want students to be able to be fully registered, fully ready to come back for the Alfred University experience in August. And part of that is removing holds very early on. So make sure that they are holdless, if that makes sense.
Clear.
And that was another one that was on my thing list. We now actually take credit cards in our bursar's office. So please, if you need to rack up some frequent flyer points while you're paying your student's college bill. I wish I could. I don't have a student in college, but I would so totally do that. Hotel points, airline points, whatever.
That
it
is a
is.
reason to celebrate.
But whatever it is, please just make sure that the holds are taken care of.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to be your first person.
And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. A recording of this will be shared with you all, so that you can review it or share with other family members who weren't able to attend. Please join us March 21st at noon for our next webinar, which will feature some of our amazing faculty. And then we'll have a third and final webinar in April showcasing our libraries and career center and all those services that are available to your students. So as always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, and Max as well with that contact info we shared. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.